So you think the F1 season's over? Not even close. For the teams, the work truly never stops. Right after the final checkered flag in Abu Dhabi, the postseason test kicked off. And the results? Yeah, they were definitely not what anyone was expecting. I mean, you take a quick look at the timesheets, and a name just pops out at the top. Aston Martin's Jack Crawford, a rookie. He was faster than all the established stars, faster than world champions. Seriously, it's one of those headlines that makes you stop and go, wait, what? And that surprising result leads us to the big question, the one we're going to unpack here. In the world of Formula One testing, what does being fastest actually mean? Well, the answer is way more complicated and honestly, a lot more interesting than you might think. See, the key here is to understand that this test wasn't about some one-lap glory run. It was a massive, crucial first step in getting ready for the future of F1. Believe it or not, the main mission for every single team out there had almost nothing to do with 2025. Nope, it was all about getting a huge head start on the absolutely monumental regulation changes that are coming in 2026. This was our very first peek into a brand new era for Formula One.
So you're probably wondering, how on earth do you test for a car that doesn't even exist yet? Well, you use something called a Mule car. It's basically a current F1 car that's been tweaked and modified to act like a future one. For this test, they were set up to mimic the lower downforce we expect in 2026, which makes the cars feel a lot twitchier, more on a knife edge. It's how teams start gathering that super valuable data.
The game plan for the teams was pretty straightforward. Step 1, use those mule cars to get a feel for 2026 downforce levels. Step 2, test out the new tire compounds Pirelli is working on for those cars. And step 3, this is the big one, gather as much data as humanly possible to help design the next-gen cars. Getting the fastest lap? Yeah, that was way, way down the list of priorities. But, while all the engineers were busy thinking about the future, some of the drivers had a much more immediate goal in mind, making a name for themselves, right now. And that's why we saw these names at the top. Jake Crawford for Aston Martin, Paul Aaron for Alpine, and Luke Browning for Williams. For guys like these, this test was a golden ticket, a huge opportunity to show what they can do behind the wheel of a real F1 car. And what's just wild is how close they all were. I mean, we are talking about tiny, tiny fractions of a second separating them. You can bet Crawford, Aaron, and Browning were all pushing to the absolute limit, leaving absolutely nothing on the table to get those bragging rights. Okay, so beyond the rookies going for glory, there was a whole other story playing out on the track, a story that was all about data, laps, and the world champions. It really boils down to this, a tale of two completely different missions. On one hand, you've got the rookies. Their job? Go flat out. Prove you've got the raw speed, catch a team boss's eye. But then you have the veterans, the established pros. Their job is totally different. They're doing these long, boring-looking runs, testing specific new parts, like a weird new front wing Mercedes was trying out, and just gathering clean, reliable data for the engineers back at base. All right, so if we just forget about the fastest lap for a second, and instead ask, who actually put in the most work out there? Well, the answer comes down to one number, 157. 157 laps. That is the absolutely massive distance that Mercedes' young star Kimi Antonelli put in. And he wasn't the only one pounding the pavement. His teammate Frederick Vesti did 145 laps. Pierre Gasly hit 144. Liam Lawson did 141. These guys were the absolute workhorses of the test, just circling the track again and again and again, feeding that precious data back to the team. All right, so now that we have all that context, right, let's take another look at that final leaderboard, but with new eyes. See, when you look at the timesheets with this in mind, it tells a completely different story. Yeah, you've got Jake Crawford up top, he's the rookie headline, but then, scroll down a bit, there's Kimi Antonelli in 6th place. He's the data workhorse with that insane lap count. You see a proven talent like Oscar Piastri down in 10th, and then a 7-time champ like Lewis Hamilton all the way down in 11th, clearly just focused on a veteran data gathering program. This is where you see the real story. Just look at where guys like Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris ended up. Hamilton was 11th, Norris 12th. Come on, if this was just a flat-out speed competition, you know for a fact they'd be right up at the top. But their mission was something else entirely. So that brings us to the big question, the one that really matters here. Who was the real winner of this test? Okay, so if the fastest lap is basically irrelevant, who actually won the Abu Dhabi test. At the end of the day, a couple of things mattered way more than anything else. First, how many laps a driver did was often way more important than how fast any single one of those laps was. Second, any team that gathered clean, solid data for the 2026 rules got a massive head start on their rivals. So who's the real winner? It was any team that packed up and left Abu Dhabi with a ton of data and a much clearer picture of the future.
You got to think of this test as the very first move in a long chess match leading up to 2026. So, with the first pieces of that giant puzzle now on the board, let me ask you, who do you think made the smartest opening move?